Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White, riding shotgun. Eli Sherman this week, and our guest for the second half is the executive director of the New England First Amendment Coalition, Justin Silverman. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
In full disclosure, I've been a board member of NEFAC since 2010, and I want to begin with something that the group has been working on. We call the First Amendment Coalition NEFAC, by that acronym, throughout the show. You and other organizations have been working to overhaul the state law that governs the public's right to access government materials. We do not have enough time to go through all of the proposed changes, but what are some marquee changes in the statute that are being proposed?
Yeah, let me first by saying it's been over a decade since we've last reformed.
I was part of the 2012 effort, yes.
Yeah, this reform has been a long time coming, so we have a great opportunity here to make some changes. And there are a number of changes, won't go into all of them, but there are a couple that are really important that I think deserve everyone's attention. The first is on police records, making sure that when police make arrests, when they're operating in our communities, we're getting information about their operations, making sure that we have all the information that we need as members of the public to know that they're acting within our best interest. And this bill will help give us more information about those arrests and those initial arrest reports. It will provide us better, quicker access to body camera footage from police officers. So that's the first thing. And then similarly, there's another provision in the law that will make it easier to access 911 calls, the audio of them. And this is a sensitive topic because these 911 calls, as you know, can be, these are the most traumatic experiences in an individual's life when they're calling 911. Someone that they know or that they're in the company of needs medical services. They call up, they are asking for help. What we need to know as a public is whether they're getting the help that they're actually asking for, whether we have somebody competent on the other end of the line that can give them the services they need. And right now, it's very difficult to get access to those calls, not just for general public, but for the families of loved ones who have passed away, who were the people needing those calls to be made to begin with. It's very difficult to get access and accountability. So that's another thing that this bill will provide, is access to those 911 calls, as well as increased transparency within law enforcement agencies.
And those calls are public record. We should point out in Massachusetts, say you can access those and scrutinize them, as many news outlets and the public has done. And you have that unique perspective as the head of NEFAC, where you can see other state public records laws, and as NEFAC does goes to bat for a lot of members of the public and for the press. How does Rhode Island compare? And as we talk about this, I should point out that NEFAC does a lot of work in this arena, and we should point people to the organization's website, where for the 6 New England states, they can click on Maine, they can click on New Hampshire. We have it on the screen now, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and people can learn, and you help them navigate the different public records laws. But to my original question, how does Rhode Island compare to the other 6 New England states?
Yeah, so short answer, middle of the road. Every state has its own public records law. They're all different. Some are stronger or weaker in some respects and others. But I will say, as far as those two things that I just mentioned, more transparency within police departments, access to 911 calls, this is the type of transparency that other states, you mentioned Massachusetts, but other states in addition are already providing. These aren't the changes that we're asking for, these aren't unusual things to have in a public records law. Other states have them, and those states are providing the transparency that we're asking for. So, this legislation that we're now considering, it's a very reasonable piece of legislation that should be supported and has many changes in it that we're already seeing in other states and have been in other state laws for years.
During your time leading the coalition, thinking about the region broadly, do you feel like government has become more or less transparent overall?
Great question. And I think sometimes it depends on what particular part of government we're talking about. Very broad terms, 30,000-foot view. I think the short answer, is that it's becoming more secretive. I think there is some more sensitivity to privacy interests that have had people in government taking a step back and being more reluctant to provide the information that all of us in the public deserve to have. That said, on the other side, there is some, I think, inclination for transparency, because we're seeing across the country more of a push for, particularly in law enforcement agencies, to have more transparency, to get a better understanding as to how these government agencies are working. And I think that momentum really is being seen, across the states. That's why we're seeing more laws being changed to give us better access to body camera footage, for example, and other dark corners of government that we haven't been able to shine a light on. We're having more momentum, seeing more people rise up and say, hey, we need to see what's going on there. We need that kind of transparency so we can understand how our government's acting on our behalf.
So for those parts of government that you say are leaning a little bit more towards secrecy, what do you think is behind that? Is that they're giving more more of a give to the private interests of organizations, or what exactly is driving that?
Yeah, I think overall there's this concern for an individual's privacy, and in some circumstances that's warranted. I value my privacy, I'm sure you do, we all do. We all value our privacy, but what we're talking about here are government institutions, government agencies, and there's less of an expectation of privacy there. And that's really what we need to focus in on. So overall, I think there is this sensitivity to these individual privacy interests that can make it difficult sometimes to get records from government. But we need to, all of us, as residents of Rhode Island, we all need to say, these records that are important to our understanding of government, and even if there are some privacy interests here that are standing in our way of transparency, our interest in knowing about government and getting that kind of transparency outweighs those privacy interests in most of those cases.
Yeah, I've noticed in over almost a quarter century of reporting that every request is now getting litigated. Everything goes through a city solicitor. Everything goes through some government agency lawyer. When 20 years ago that wasn't the case. It was just you asked for something and you would generally get it. And I do wonder sometimes if that is a fallout of the shrinking press corps, and there's less interaction between. Now, public records laws aren't made for journalists; they're made for the public, but we often use them, and I do wonder if that's sort of a fallout of the shrinking press corps. But when someone is denied, Justin, access to a public record in Rhode Island, the main avenue of appeal is to the Attorney General's office, which by law is charged with deciding if the government agency violated APRA. Now, one of the biggest roles the AG's office plays is as the state's law firm. They represent state agencies when they go to court, they're getting sued or something like that. In your view, is there a conflict there in having state attorneys being this neutral arbiter in public records fights, yet they represent state agencies in legal battles, not even to mention their close affiliation with law enforcement?
Yeah, I think there's a conflict, at least in perception. Right. We need to, as members of the public, we need to have trust in our government institutions. When it comes to public records law, we need to make sure that the Attorney General's office is defending our interests and transparency. So I think given the other roles that the office has, certainly there's at least a conflict as far as the perception that there might be a conflict of interest there. I will say it's not this situation isn't unusual. There are other states that are set up similarly, where you have the AG's office overseeing the public records law.
But other states do it differently, particularly to our north and our south, right? I mean, Connecticut has a commission?
So there are some examples. Connecticut is always the first one to note because they have a third-party commission, almost completely independent. It's state-funded, but it operates independently, and that hears public records disputes and makes decisions, and those decisions are actually binding. They're enforceable. So if somebody doesn't have the time and the money to take a dispute to court, they can go to the commission, they can get a decision, and then that decision again is enforceable. Different than other states. We go to Massachusetts, we have a supervisor of records there that hears disputes and issues decisions.
In the Secretary of State's office?
In the Secretary of State's office. But the flaw there, and no system's perfect, but the flaw there is that those decisions aren't enforceable. Ultimately, you need to either take that case to court or have the Attorney General, again, in Massachusetts, enforce that decision on your behalf. Other states, you go to Maine, you go to New Hampshire, you don't have any kind of third party mediating these disputes. You just simply have to take these to court yourself. So again, there isn't a perfect system that we can point to, but we can take some guidance, particularly from Connecticut and Massachusetts, as far as how we might be able to restructure the system here in Rhode Island to make it better.
We have just about a minute left here, Justin, so I'm going to ask you one other thing that I know you've been involved with. Look, one good thing out of the pandemic was remote access to public meetings. That has ended, and there's a bill right now that would kind of turn back the clock to 2020 in some ways, right?
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of states, including Rhode Island right now, are trying to figure out how to take that silver lining from the pandemic, remote access, and make it permanent moving forward. And by remote access, I really mean hybrid access. How can we create a system where citizens can both go to a government meeting in person and get the face-to-face time with their representatives that they deserve?
We have about 30 seconds left.
But can also, from home or from any other remote location, also come into that meeting and be there and be present and engage. It's a matter of just making that democracy more equitable for everybody.
Yeah, and again, we have a series of resources on NEFAC, nefac.org, for people who want to check that out and get educated on public records laws and a whole bunch of other things. Justin Silverman from the New England First Amendment Coalition, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Our first half guest was Neil Steinberg from the Rhode Island Foundation. If you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. For Eli Sherman, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.